Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about hearing God's voice. It's part 4 of our series. And today we're actually going to dive into the unique ways that God speaks to us. We've talked about how God speaks through his word. We talked about how God speaks through confirmations. We have talked about how he talks to us through peace, through wise counsel. But today we're going to look at some different things, some weird things. I mean, do you think that God can actually speak to you through an animal? Maybe your dog or your cat or a bird or a rabbit or a squirrel? Well, how about a donkey? Well, let's look at the story. Numbers chapter 22. Verse 22, it says, "Then God's anger was aroused because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary was against him." So let me just give you a little background here. Balaam is not supposed to be doing something, but he's doing it. He's traveling. He's on the road, and he's on his donkey going, and the Lord didn't want him to do that. And so here an angel of the Lord shows up and is visible to the donkey, but not to Balaam. And literally, the angel is trying to stop Balaam from moving forward. The donkey sees it. Balaam doesn't like what's happening because the donkey is actually trying to avoid this invisible force, and it's causing problems for Balaam. So Balaam strikes the donkey 3 times, and then let's pick up the story. Verse 25, "And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her. Then the angel of the Lord went further and stood in the narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the left or the right. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam." So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey again. So I'm going to bring up this verse. Verse 28, it says, "Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey." Interesting here. "And she said to Balaam," so now the donkey's actually talking to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? Now, I think at the moment that the donkey actually would speak to me, I'd like pass out. I mean, I'm thinking, what on earth? What did I just hear? Here's a donkey that I've had forever, and she's now talking to me. And but it's interesting that the very next verse, Balaam doesn't even it's not even moved by it. And Balaam said to the donkey, so now Balaam's going to go ahead and talk to the donkey. He says, "Because you've abused me. I wish there was a sword in my hand. For now, I'd kill you." So the donkey spoke back to Balaam and says, "Am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day?" I mean, so this gives me an indication that this donkey is remembering, is understanding the whole relationship here. Okay, and so was I ever disposed to you to do this kind of thing? And he said, no. So Balaam and the donkey, they're just having a conversation here. And verse 31, "Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn, and he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, 'Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to stand against you, because your way is perverse before me.' The donkey saw me, turned aside from me these 3 times, and if she had not turned aside, surely I would have also killed you by now and let the donkey live." So here's a situation where God's really trying to get Balaam's attention. He's trying to speak to him. He's trying to say something to him. And literally the donkey, mouth was opened, spoke to Balaam. to get his attention. What the heck are you doing? What's going on? Your way's perverse. And all this starts coming out in this dialogue. And then the angel of the Lord and God speaking to Balaam. So very interesting. So yes, God can use a donkey actually to speak to you or any other animal if he chooses, if he wants to do that. But God also speaks through circumstances. So a lot of times God will try to speak to people directly or impression on their heart, but if he can't get through to them, he may actually create some circumstances to do that. Now, Jonah is a good illustration of this. Jonah spoke directly, or God spoke directly to Jonah and said, look, I want you to go to Nineveh. Well, what does Jonah do? He heads in the opposite direction. So Jonah didn't listen. So then God spoke to him through circumstances, right? If you read and continue reading the story, you'll see that Jonah actually got on a ship and a big storm came up. That was the first circumstance to realize, you know what? God's trying to tell me something here. He tried to tell me at first. He spoke to me directly. I didn't want to listen. I'm heading off the other direction. And now a big storm comes up. That should have been his first clue. The second was when they threw him in the water and a big fish came and swallowed him up. That's the second circumstance. And by now you got to be thinking, you know what, Lord, I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. Just get me out of this belly of this fish. And then the third time is there's a story with Jonah that towards the end of the chapter, a vine withers away. And so it's these circumstances because God's trying to talk to you. He wants to talk to you. And if he can't, get to you one way, he's going to get to you another way. And sometimes that's through circumstances. My father actually had a story one time that he said, that he was writing stories and he was like, God, do you really want me to continue writing these stories? So he went out and to the backyard. It was nighttime and there was stars up in the sky. And he said, Lord, if you want me to continue writing, I want you to send a shooting star across the sky. Well, immediately a shooting star went across the sky and he was like, well, I guess that's the Lord. I guess I need to keep writing. And so he continued to write. So God is going to communicate to us in many and variety of ways, right? So again, through peace in our hearts, through the word, we are guided and directed by the Lord. But that is not the only ways that God can speak to us. Have you ever been kind of spoken to through a song on the radio or a music or worship that you're listening to, right? You're listening to it, and then all of a sudden the words come on and it speaks to you directly. I remember this one situation where I was feeling a little bit like, man, this is it. I'm done. Ministry's over, and I was getting real discouraged. I was having some health battles, and I remember this song came on the radio, God's not done with you. Here's the lyrics. God's not done with you. Even when with your broken heart and your wounds and your scars, God's not done with you. Even when you're lost and it's hard and you're feeling apart, God's not done with you. It's not over. It's only begun. And at that moment, I felt like the Lord was encouraging me and saying, Lee, you're not done. I'm not done with you. Actually, it's only beginning. And so God can speak to us through music. He can speak to us through worship as we're worshiping the Lord, whether in our own home or at the church, whatever it is. Now, God also speaks through prophetic, right? There's a prophetic ministry. The word of prophecy can come forth, and you can receive that from someone else, or you can receive that from your own heart, that the Lord is just speaking to you, maybe for someone or for a situation. But the prophetic word that was given, and I've had 3 prophetic words that were given over and over that literally confirmed that what I felt the Lord was speaking to my heart, that he wanted to give me at least 80 years of life. And so we don't know our days and how long we're going to live, but I prayed for 80 years and I felt like the Lord answered that. And then he confirmed that over a few other times. So, of course, I'm not there yet, but I'm still kicking. And then we can get the Lord to speak to us through other people, like our friends, parents, teachers, pastors saying something random or by wisdom. And you're like, why did you say that? That's very interesting, because just a day or a month ago or a day ago or a week ago, this happened, and you can tell that's, again, sort of a confirmation situation, but he'll use other people to speak into your life. Now, what about dreams, right? I mean, God speaks to people through dreams. I've had quite a number of dreams, and I've heard other people have dreams, and I've heard their stories. Even in countries where the gospel is not presented openly and publicly, God is speaking through dreams. People are seeing Jesus in their dreams, saying, "Follow me," or a man in their dreams. And then finally, when they come to know it's actually Jesus that was speaking to them through their dreams. We know that that's through, like, Joseph had dreams, and Solomon was spoken to through dreams. Jacob, Peter, John, and Paul were all spoken to through dreams. I remember I had a dream that I was looking at kind of a lake or a body of water, but it was more like I guess it was more of a river, because I could see on this side and I could see on the other side that was land, but there was this big river in between, and I could see through the water, and there were alligators all in the water, underneath the water. And there were people that were just going through the water, crossing to the other side, swimming to the other side. And I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And in my dream, I was like warning the people, don't go into the water because there's alligators there. It was a pathway. And I felt like the Lord was saying, "Lee, you're going to be a person who can warn people about the enemy and about the things that are happening in the world and the life, and you can actually be, because you're going to see what's the dangers that are there. You're going to see what the pathway looks like, and you're going to be able to warn the people." So, and I've had quite a number of different dreams that have I felt like the Lord spoken to me or given me some kind of direction or guidance. What about through our thoughts? That happens. We get that a lot, right? And sometimes we're like, "Well, is that me, or is that the devil, or is that God speaking to me?" So Amos chapter 4, verse 13 says, "For behold, he who forms mountains and creates the wind, who declares to man what his thought is." Notice that he declares to man what his thought is. So God's thoughts, he's bringing and revealing them to man, and that can come in our thoughts, and makes the morning darkness, who treads the high places of the earth. The Lord God of hosts is his name. So the Lord is the one that Amos here is talking about, that reveals his thoughts to mankind. What about the whisper to Elijah? 1 Kings chapter 19. I'll just read this here. It says, "Then he said, Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, a still small voice." So this passage declares to us that God is speaking sometimes through a still small voice. Now, it's difficult to hear that still small voice if you are in a crowded area, or you got a lot of noise going on. Maybe it's the radio, maybe it's TV, maybe it's your social media. You got to get quiet to hear a still small voice. Well, what about also open and closed doors? Have you ever tried to pursue something and the door was shut? Well, that's God speaking to you, saying, "This is not the path I want you to take." What about open doors, right? Where the green light is there, you got the invitation, and that kind of indicates that, man, this may be the pathway that I'm supposed to take, because the Lord's opening up this opportunity and giving me a green light to do this. It could be a job that you actually, applied for and you got, and because that open door, you're saying, the Lord wants me to take this job. And in the same way, it could be a decline of a job that you didn't get that you wanted, and the Lord was actually directing you or even protecting you from that job. Travel plans change. Gosh, even red lights. Sometimes we get to a red light, we think, "Oh, turn green, turn green, turn green." And yet, you know what? That's just, maybe God's protecting you from a wreck or an accident or something like that. Who knows, right? But open and closed doors, God can speak to us through those. God also speaks to us through nature. Psalms 19, I'm going to bring this up here on the screen, 1-3. "To the chief musician, a psalm of David, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. So literally right here, the heavens declare the glory of God. So here we're seeing, right, that it's the glory of God's being revealed to us through creation, through heavens. And it says, day unto day utters speech. So nature talks to us. It communicates to us. And we can know God actually through nature. Romans, I'll read this, just Romans chapter 1, verse 19 and 20 says, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes. Now remember, the word invisible doesn't mean non-existent. The word invisible just means that there's something there, but you can't see it with your own eyes. But it says that his invisible attributes, think about what are God's invisible attributes, but they're clearly seen, being understood by the things that were created or made. So out of creation, we can actually see God's invisible attributes, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are, or we are in a sense, without excuse. Well, God talked to Pharaoh as well through plagues. So Exodus chapter 7, verse 16, yeah, I mean, if you ever think that God wouldn't speak to somebody who wasn't necessarily a believer or a Christian, here you go. You got one for Pharaoh. And it says, and you shall say to him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has sent me to say to you, let my people go. Now, this is Moses relaying a message to Pharaoh, but God said, look, this is my words, and I want you to say them to Pharaoh. If they were Moses' words, he would have said, let God's people go. But this is actually God speaking to Pharaoh, and he says, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But indeed, until now, you would not hear. And Pharaoh, of course, didn't listen to the word. Again, God was trying to communicate directly to him, and he would not listen. So then what happens? Circumstances. We talked about that in the earlier part of this video, that God will use circumstances. He tried to talk to Jonah. Jonah didn't listen, so God brought circumstances to bring about his voice. Now, here we got a situation with Pharaoh and Moses said, the word of the Lord came to Pharaoh. He's not listening. So circumstances, and that's all the plagues that came on the land of Egypt. And each one of those plagues was actually a word of the Lord being communicated through the plague to say, Pharaoh, let my people go. Now, we can also go into the supernatural manifestations. We've got some of those in Scripture where God is speaking through supernatural means. The burning bush, right, where God was talking to Moses and trying to let him know what the plans were. And he spoke to him through a burning bush. That's Exodus chapter 3. Gideon's fleece, we talked about that last week. That was a very supernatural way of God communicating to Gideon. That's in Judges chapter 6. And then we got Paul on the road of Damascus, where a bright light shines down. That's supernatural. That's in Acts chapter 9. And then Balaam's donkey, which we talked about, that was very supernatural. That was in Numbers 22. So God is not limited to just speaking through like his audible voice to people, which most don't hear, or his word that some read it, listen, they might do, may not do. But God, it literally has so many ways that he wants to communicate to us, and he'll do that through all these different things. And fasting is another way. I remember when I was trying to make a decision about something, I fasted for 3 days. And it was the first day I was like, okay, Lord, am I supposed to be doing this? And it was very unclear. I just didn't know. I couldn't hear. So I fasted for 3 days. On the third day, I asked the same question, Lord, am I supposed to be doing this? And it was like super clear and super obvious. Oh yeah, you're supposed to be doing this. And I was like, I don't know why I was so unsure about this a couple days ago, but through the fasting, I positioned myself to be able to hear better. So my hearer became clearer, right? So when I fasted, I removed all the stuff out of my body. In a sense, the food was eliminated and my body could get calm. It could get into that, restful state, and also my mind. And I guess my hearer became clearer, and I was able to know exactly what I was supposed to do. So when you hear God's voice, we need to be good stewards of that voice. Now, here's how. So number one, we are good stewards of God's voice when we truly listen to him. So how many times have you been in a church service and a prophetic word comes forth, and after the church service is over and you're on your way home, you don't remember that prophetic word? Somebody stood up in the middle of worship or wherever, and they blurted out a prophetic word, and literally 2 hours later on your way home, you can't remember the prophetic word. That's because you weren't truly listening to that word from the Lord. So to be a good steward, number one, we have to truly listen to what God is saying. We can't just dismiss it and then forget what he's saying. So write it down, record it, do whatever you can to make sure that you are listening to what he's saying. Number two, we got to be good stewards of God's voice when we respond in humility. Now, even if we don't like the word spoken, we can't respond with pridefulness or, God, I don't want to hear that. That's not what, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to receive it. Why are you saying that to me? And you're coming with God with an attitude. No, we need to come to God and be a good steward of his word by coming in humility and realizing that God wants the best for us, and his word to us is to actually bless us and be a benefit to us. The third way you can be a good steward of God's voice is heeding his word. So actually doing them, right? I mean, the Bible tells us, don't be just a hearer, be a doer. Well, that's the way that we can be a good steward. Once we listen to the word, we come with humility, and then we actually do what he told us to do. Remember Jonah heard the word and he said, nope, not doing it, not going to Nineveh. I'm going to go jump on a boat. Well, God got his attention and got it back. So what was he trying to do? He got to do what God is saying. So has God spoken something to you? Are you dealing with something that God has revealed to you, or you're wrestling with it right now? So have you listened to it? Did you write it down? Did you record it? How did you respond to the word? Have you responded in humility, or was it prideful or a bad attitude, or something else? And what are you doing about the word? Are you doing it? So I've got just two discussion questions to stir, because I really want to create more of a discussion today around the different ways God has spoken to you. And so the first question is, what are some ways you have heard the Lord speak to you? Share those experiences. I'll bring the two questions up. And number two, how do you know it was God speaking? So what are some ways? And I want you to share those if you can, share those experiences, because that'll be a blessing and encouragement to others. And then what are you doing about that if you want to share that part? And then how do you know it was God actually speaking to you? So I hope this will stir some discussion around the variety of ways that God speaks to us, and help us not to be limited by expecting God to speak in a certain way. And if he doesn't, then it's just not God. We don't want to deny the many ways that he speaks to us. So circumstances, dreams, supernatural manifestations, animals, with the still small voice of the whisper, opening closed doors, the prophetic, songs, music that we listen to on the radio, maybe a shooting star across the sky when you ask for it. Who knows? God can do anything he wants, and he'll speak to you in a way that works for you. So anyway, hope this discussion is good for you today, and God bless you, and we'll see you in the next video. Well, we hope you've enjoyed that introduction to our discussion today. One of the cool things about Cheers is that we actually have a discussion around the topic. And now I want to invite you to come into our discussion together and participate with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can go to cheerschurch.alterlive.com. We'll put the link in the description. If you're already on Altar Live with us watching, then you can just log in to be able to participate. You can turn your camera on or off, your microphone on or off. You can participate as much or as little as you want to. We just want you to enjoy the time together and fellowship together. And we just hope you're blessed by joining us today. So consider joining our discussion, and we'll see you there.